Warning, some viewers may be too lame to enjoy the following information.
Roller coasters are some of the most popular amusement park attractions worldwide, and according to Roller Coaster Database, or RCDB.com, there are currently over 5,000 roller coasters across the globe. Amongst these thousands of coasters, roller coaster enthusiasts like myself have determined which ones are the best of the best. The coasters that stand out against all others. Some of those include Fury 325 at Carowinds, Edge of Night at Fuji-Q Highland, Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, and so many more. These are roller coasters that enthusiasts absolutely drool over. Another big name roller coaster is the Voyage at Holiday World. Voyage is commonly found right at the #1 ranking in many enthusiasts' lists of top roller coasters. However, there is a wooden roller coaster that is rather similar to the Voyage at Holiday World that nowadays seems to get very little publicity from roller coaster enthusiasts. That ride is Shivering Timbers, a massive wooden roller coaster located at Michigan's Adventure in Muskegon, Michigan. I recently had the chance to ride Shivering Timbers, and the ride absolutely blew me away and left me wondering why more enthusiasts don't rank this as a top roller coaster. It shocks me that this coaster is missing from so many enthusiasts' lists of top roller coasters. In my eyes, it's one of the best roller coasters I've ever ridden. Shivering Timbers used to get recognized as a world-class roller coaster, but in recent years, it's almost like the ride has been forgotten. In this video, I'll be giving a full review of Shivering Timbers, as well as comparing it to the Voyage at Holiday World, which is objectively a very similar wooden roller coaster that does receive a lot of praise. Before we get started, if you guys wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that would be greatly appreciated as that helps the channel greatly against the YouTube algorithm. Alright, let's dig in. Shivering Timbers was designed and built by Custom Coasters International Inc., or CCI, a now defunct American manufacturer of wooden roller coasters. The ride stands at a height of 122 feet, or 37 meters, features a 53.3 degree first drop, reaches speeds of 57 miles per hour, or 92 kilometers per hour, has a length of 5,383 feet, or 1.6 kilometers, and lasts for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Altogether, the ride cost a total of $4.5 million to construct in 1998. When we first pulled up to Michigan's Adventure, I was shocked at just how large Shivering Timbers is. While it's not the tallest roller coaster by any means, it's just so long. The endless airtime hills that run alongside the entrance plaza are spectacular to look at, and the ride overall just dominates the skyline of Michigan's Adventure. Be sure to take a good look at the wooden structure of the ride, as it's massive. It's almost like the structure is overbuilt, and it looks really cool. Michigan's Adventure is a rather small park, so it's easy to navigate to Shivering Timbers. Once you've walked through the main gate, take a right and walk all the way down. The presentation of the ride isn't too bad. There's some nice landscaping decorating the edge of the queue and station building, but nothing to write home about. The ride runs 2 trains built by the Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters Inc., or PTC. These are their 2-bench trains with ratcheting lap bars and seatbelts. One train is green and one is blue, and both feature 6 cars and seat a total of 24 riders. The ride begins with a left turn out of the station that runs underneath the final brake run and into the lift hill. The lift hill is surprisingly fast and quickly pulls trains to the top. There are signs warning riders that taking off their seatbelts will lead to being ejected from Michigan's Adventure. When you ride this coaster, be sure to leave your seatbelt on. The train then heads down the first drop. If you're sitting in the back, you'll feel a good amount of whip as well as a moment of strong floater airtime. The drop itself isn't very steep, however, and is not very parabolic, so the airtime kind of ends early as the train travels down the flat slope drop. Riders in the front and middle don't really receive too much airtime on the drop, but there is just a little bit. This leads into the first pullout, which I found to be rather forceful for a wooden roller coaster. The train heads up into the first airtime hill, which reaches a height of 100 feet or 30.5 meters. For only being 22 feet or about 7 meters shorter than the lift hill, the train charges over this hill rather quickly. You notice immediately as you experience strong and sustained floater airtime in basically every seat of the train. The front cars get strong floater airtime right away, which slowly fades out as the train heads back down the drop. The middle cars receive decently strong floater airtime over the entire hill, and the back rows get strong floater airtime at the crest of the hill and down the drop. The train hits the second pullout, which also delivers good positive G-forces. The following airtime hill is 95 feet, or 29 meters tall, so barely shorter than the airtime hill beforehand, but the train still charges through, delivering another great moment of airtime just like the hill beforehand. This hill even features a small jolt at the top, which made the airtime feel even stronger to me. The train drops out of the second airtime hill and charges over a lower and more spread out airtime hill, maybe half the height of the larger airtime hills beforehand, and riders are hit with several seconds of strong and sustained floater airtime, no matter what seat you're sitting in. This is my favorite airtime moment on the entire ride. Now obviously, the airtime is stronger when sitting in the front or back seats, but no matter where you sit, this hill will deliver. In the back rows, you even get slammed back into the train as the strong airtime is met with strong positive G-forces, as this pullout doesn't head all the way to ground level. The train heads up another larger size airtime hill, which delivers another great moment of airtime, just like the two larger hills prior. Riders again enjoy another moment of sustained floater airtime. Next is a double up, providing strong floater airtime for all on the first leap and decent floater airtime to riders in the front of the train on the second leap. The train banks slightly to the right, but not enough as riders are hit with strong lateral forces as the train rips through the turnaround. It's especially cool sitting in the front on the turnaround as you're still getting airtime from the double up as you get pushed to the left from the lateral forces of the turn. The train rises out of the turnaround and rides through a brief section of straight track, offering the only tame moment on the entire coaster. The train quickly turns to the left through an unbanked turn and begins to drop back to ground. This drop hits the best for riders in the back, as the accelerating train whips riders through the unbanked turn, delivering strong lateral forces as well as airtime. Riders now begin the returning series of airtime hills that take them back to the station. The first hill is low to the ground and taken at a high amount of speed, delivering more sustained floater airtime for all riders. Next is a second double up, which delivers the best for riders sitting in the front. I still received good floater airtime on both leaps while sitting in the middle rows, but almost no airtime in the back row on the first leap, but lots of great airtime on the drop down the second leap. Overall, it's another great moment of strong floater airtime for most. Following this drop is a speed hill, which replaced what used to be a trick track. I almost found this hill to end too quickly to really feel the airtime. It's very different from the rest of the airtime hills found on the ride, which are part of the original design. Next is another great sustained moment of airtime, delivering airtime for all riders on the train. I think it's the next hill after that feels the most triangular in shape. It delivers a quick but even stronger pop of airtime than most hills on the ride. Next up is another one of my favorite airtime moments found on the ride. This hill nearly rides the same as the long and sustained floater airtime hill on the outbound section of the coaster. The airtime is very strong and delivers perfectly in basically every seat of the train. The coaster then dives underneath the structure of the first drop and lift hill and cruises over one of the weaker airtime hills of the ride. I found this hill to be better in the back rows than the rest of the train. Last is one last airtime hill, which delivers one last pop of floater airtime. It's not the best airtime moment on the ride, but it's also not the worst. The train then climbs up and banks slightly to the left as the train rockets through a long left-hand helix. The lateral forces are strong and leave you pinned to the left the entire time. The train finally exits a 630-degree helix and flies into the brake run, ending the ride. Overall, Shivering Timbers delivers on so many categories. The airtime is perfect, and with so many moments of it, feels endless. All in all, there are 17 moments of airtime. The pacing is amazing, and the ride never feels slow one bit, even with it featuring over 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers of track, with only a 122 foot or 37 meter tall lift hill. When you really think about it, the track length compared to the maximum height of the coaster is absolutely insane. It usually takes a coaster over the height of 200 feet or 61 meters to reach the lengths of Shivering Timbers. For comparison, El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure is 181 feet or 55 meters tall, but only features 4,400 feet or 1.3 kilometers of track. A lot of this has to do with the steel wheels that ride on the steel track for Shivering Timbers, and if I had to guess, the endless airtime hills burn off less energy than turns. In addition, Shivering Timbers is also pretty smooth as it currently stands. The turnaround and helix are glass smooth, and most of the ride is smooth as well, even in a wheel seat. But be warned, there are currently 2 nasty potholes on the ride. They're both found in the first 2 valleys. Both of these potholes hit as the train completes the pull-up into the large airtime hills. The train kind of jolts up, and if you're not prepared, you'll get knocked hard. Uncle Nate did find a good remedy to ride through them smoothly, by gripping the grab bar at the potholes and pulling forward so that your butt lifts off the seat ever so slightly. This saves you from getting knocked by the train as it jolts up. Now, I was absolutely blown away by every ride I had on Shivering Timbers, and of the nearly 550 roller coasters I have ridden, Shivering Timbers is without a doubt one of my favorites. If you don't believe me, just listen to this reaction from Uncle Nate, who also rode Shivering Timbers for the first time on this trip.
Dude, so Shivering Timbers is something special. It's better than Twisted Timbers. It's better than Sky Rush. It's better than Superman the Ride at New England. It's better than Phantom's Revenge. Did I say that yet? This ride's elite. I am speechless. It's crazy. Get up here and ride this thing. It's amazing.
See, I'm not the only one. Another great thing about the coaster is that there isn't a bad seat on the train. A ride in the middle still guarantees airtime on basically every single hill. Now, the outward hills are a bit better in the front of the train, and the returning airtime hills are a bit better toward the back of the train. When you make your way to Michigan's Adventure, I honestly recommend re-riding this coaster in every seat, just to compare it. Now, I was fortunate enough to ride Shivering Timbers and the Voyage at Holiday World within 24 hours of each other, and the two roller coasters have quite a lot in common. From an overview, both are massive out and back wooden roller coasters, meaning the ride starts at one location and heads outward during the first portion of the ride, then turns around midway and heads back towards the station. Michigan's Adventure even advertises Shivering Timbers as a half-mile out and a half-mile back in just 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The two coasters are both extremely long and hold their speed very well all the way until the final brake run. Let's compare the outward run of both coasters, which are rather similar. Both start with a large and straight first drop, followed by a large airtime hill, then another large airtime hill, followed by a speed hill taken lower to the ground, and then another larger airtime hill. Playing the POVs side by side, these elements almost perfectly sync up. Now, of course, there are still differences here, and each ride does certain things better than the other. Regarding airtime, Shivering Timbers does airtime much better on this outward run of track. I found the airtime on Shivering Timbers to really pop me out of my seat, and it left me out of my seat pretty much over the entire duration of each hill. On the Voyage, I found that if I didn't spring myself up a bit using my legs, that the airtime isn't as powerful or sustained. On the Voyage, I almost bounce up and down in my seat over the larger airtime hills, whereas Shivering Timbers pops me out of my seat and leaves me floating all on its own. The Voyage does have a much better first drop though. Shivering Timbers falls a little flat here. Timbers is also a parking lot coaster built on a flat section of land, and this leads to little excitement from your surroundings during the ride. Whereas the Voyage is in the woods, which helps to make the ride feel faster, and it's also built on a large hill. During the first half, you climb up the hill and the coaster dives underground 3 times, which gives the ride another wow factor. Overall, I prefer the first half of Shivering Timbers to Voyage's first half, as Shivering Timbers just delivers much better airtime. Next up, we have the turnarounds of both coasters. This is an easy win for the Voyage since the ride relentlessly charges through a spaghetti bowl of track, filled with pops of airtime, fast and low to the ground turns, and 2 90-degree bank turns. This all takes place in the woods as well, which further heightens the sense of speed. Timbers features a much shorter turnaround that consists of a double up providing good floater airtime and a classic CCI unbanked turnaround delivering a great moment of lateral forces. That's one advantage Shivering Timbers has over the Voyage, as the Voyage doesn't really offer many moments of lateral forces. The only moment that stands out to me is the low to the ground speed hill as you pop out of one tunnel and dash into another. Timbers also doesn't really have much of a dead spot as the train charges through the straight track on the turnaround. The Voyage does die down for a bit as the train climbs high into the mid-course brake run. While this hill is only a few feet off the ground, it's taller than any of the hills found in the Spaghetti Bowl, so it's taken rather slowly. The use of trim brakes also doesn't help, as this limits the speed into the ride's iconic underground triple down, whereas Shivering Timbers charges quickly through a section of straight track and then down an unbanked drop, delivering plenty of lateral forces and airtime to riders seated in the back. Now for the return runs, it's kind of hard for me to pick a favorite amongst the two. Shivering Timbers focuses on airtime and lateral forces, where the Voyage focuses less on airtime but overall feels way more relentless. Overall, while Shivering Timbers is an airtime lover's dream, the Voyage is even more of a perfect roller coaster, as it takes the layout of Shivering Timbers but gets more creative and unique. The ride uses terrain to its advantage and dives underground into tunnels numerous times, and the return run as the train heads downhill just offers unmatched pacing. Now Shivering Timbers, in my opinion, has much better airtime than the Voyage does, but the Voyage still has plenty of great airtime. But I found the sustained moments of airtime to be much better on Shivering Timbers, where the Voyage shines more with its strong moments of quick airtime pops. Voyage was marketed as having the most airtime of any roller coaster when it opened in 2006 at 24.3 seconds. But I'd argue that Shivering Timbers offers the same amount of airtime or possibly even more. Where Voyage features kind of gimmicky 90-degree bank turns, Shivering Timbers offers moments of airtime instead, something I prefer. Now the Voyage is a top 5 roller coaster for me, and while I do prefer it to Shivering Timbers, it's not by a long shot. To be completely honest with you, while I don't know where I rank Shivering Timbers just yet, it's easily a top 15, if not top 10 ride for me. I prefer Shivering Timbers to many elite roller coasters like Skyrush at Hershey Park and even Fury 325 at Carowinds. Now, of course, this is just my opinion, but it does beg the question, why aren't enthusiasts talking more about Shivering Timbers? I have ridden nearly 550 roller coasters, and Shivering Timbers shines as one of the best coasters I have ever ridden. When I think of my dream roller coaster, I always picture taking El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, but making it even longer, so that it's just ejector airtime hill after ejector airtime hill. While Shivering Timbers doesn't offer ejector airtime, it's the closest thing to a living example of my dream roller coaster, and I'm sure many of your dream roller coasters as well. To me, this is easily the most underrated wooden roller coaster in the United States. I just wish it were located at a different park, or if the park were located somewhere else. While Shivering Timbers is absolutely a gem, Michigan's Adventure is lackluster. The park is overall neglected by Cedar Fair, its parent company, and it doesn't have much else to draw enthusiasts to it. This doesn't help that the park is located far up the west side of Michigan, and is far off the path for enthusiasts traveling between parks like Cedar Point, Kings Island, Indiana Beach, or Six Flags Great America, all of which are much better parks. Therefore, it's often skipped due to time or budget constraints, as there are just much better options for parks that aren't so far out of the way. Now, Shivering Timbers wasn't always like this. When the coaster first opened, it was a huge hit, and quickly became a favorite amongst roller coaster enthusiasts of the time. In 1999, the ride was awarded the world's 4th best wooden roller coaster by the Golden Ticket Awards, and from 2001 to 2004, the ride was awarded world's 2nd best wooden roller coaster for 4 years straight. There was even a roller coaster enthusiast event called Timbers Fest, where attendees were given extended ride time, or ERT, on Shivering Timbers. The event first occurred in June of 1999 and continued until 2010. Now, unfortunately, the event hasn't taken place ever since, and the overall buzz and hype surrounding Shivering Timbers seemed to die out. I almost never hear the coaster talked about anymore, and it's hardly mentioned in a list of top roller coasters. As other amusement parks continue to grow by adding more attractions or improving the overall guest experience, Michigan's Adventure has kind of remained stagnant. The last roller coaster the park got was a relocated Vekoma SLC in 2008 that now operates by the name Thunderhawk. Shivering Timbers also ran less than stellar during parts of the 2000s and 2010s, as it got rougher and ran slower than it used to. So while the last generation of roller coaster enthusiasts had more of a reason to go to Michigan's Adventure, the newer generations of enthusiasts that I consider myself to be a part of have not. But I hope with this video, I'm able to convince enthusiasts to make the trek out to Michigan's Adventure, as Shivering Timbers alone is worth it, especially if you're a fan of good wooden roller coasters and endless amounts of airtime. But maybe wait until later in July or August if you plan to visit in 2021, as the ride just suffered an accident that seems to have been caused by operator error. On Saturday, June 19th, a train full of riders collided with a parked train in the station. From what I can gather, it appears the blue train was stopped on the ride's final brake run following the helix. For whatever reason, the blue train was manually released from the final brake run, resulting in its collision with the stopped green train. Thankfully, no riders were seriously injured, but this is not an accident that should have occurred. I hope that everyone involved is okay. If you also watch my problematic roller coaster series, I heavily go into detail on block zones. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train in case the block zone ahead is still occupied. This is the safety system that prevents roller coaster trains from colliding with one another. Shivering Timbers has a safe system of block zones that, as far as I know, have operated properly since the coaster opened in 1998. The ride has a rather simple set of block zones that operate properly when the ride is run in automatic mode, where the ride's computer system is in charge. I don't have the confirmed set of blocks, but this is what they most likely are: the station block zone, the lift hill, and the main track. So a total of 3 block zones that allow Shivering Timbers to operate safely with 2 trains. Most roller coasters also offer a manual mode, where ride operators or members of maintenance can manually override a block zone and move trains if necessary. Manual mode is typically only used when trains are empty or during moments of downtime to evacuate stuck riders. In this case, I'd guess that the person at controls meant to manually dispatch the train stopped in the station and not to release the stopped train at the brake run. Either way, the block zones function correctly because the blue train did properly stop on the final brake run while the station block was still occupied. Whatever caused the collision afterwards was certainly due to human error, and it's honestly shameful that it occurred. I really hope that going forward, Michigan's Adventure tries to take better care of Shivering Timbers, most importantly to keep riders safe, and also because the coaster is an absolute gem. This is a ride that should be well taken care of, and I wish the ride was taken care of the way that Holiday World does to Voyage and its other wooden coasters. As of right now, the ride isn't very rough, it's quite smooth besides the obnoxious potholes on the first 2 airtime hills. But I'm not confident that the park will keep the ride operating this way, especially since Cedar Fair doesn't invest heavily in Michigan's Adventure. I guess I hope that Cedar Fair would show this park some more love, as I'm sure it could grow into more of a destination for people if it had more going on. I recently learned that the Silver Lake sand dunes are nearby the park and are the only sand dunes in the United States east of the Mississippi River. I'm sure the park could draw from tourists who visit there. It's just unfortunate because Cedar Fair prioritizes their larger parks and invests more heavily in them. Shivering Timbers was built by Michigan's Adventure when it was still an independent park, and I hear the ride was part of a Phase 1 expansion for the park. Later phases would have included a hypercoaster built by Morgan, probably like Steel Force at Dorney Park or Mamba at Worlds of Fun. While Cedar Fair bought the property in 2001, most likely because they wanted to stop expansion of the park to reduce competition with Cedar Point. Kind of like how Cedar Fair purchased Six Flags Worlds of Adventure in Ohio and closed it down just a few years later. Luckily, Cedar Fair kept Michigan's Adventure around, most likely because it was less of a threat than Geauga Lake would have been to Cedar Point. Had Cedar Fair continued to develop Michigan's Adventure like the park had originally planned, I bet the park would be more of a destination today. Luckily, we can still go and enjoy Shivering Timbers. Honestly, it would be awesome if the park brought back Timbers Fest. I would pay good money for the chance to experience several hours of night rides on Timbers, and I'm sure many enthusiasts would also. Maybe the American Coaster Enthusiasts or the newly formed Buzz Bars Club can get an event going. I would certainly attend that, and it would help establish the coaster again as a landmark because it truly is. Now this is probably even more far-fetched, but if the park were to have Gravity Group and Martin and Vlemix completely retract the ride in a few years, that would probably restore the coaster to the speeds it used to run when it first opened. While I really enjoyed the coaster on my rides, watching these POVs from its earlier years shows how it used to run even faster. If you do go to the park, I do hope that the coaster is both open for you and running well. I've heard that due to weather from the nearby Lake Michigan, the coaster is a little bit moody and can run slow on occasion. When we went to the park, it was maybe 80 degrees out with about 50% humidity, and our friend McLovin, who grew up around the park, said the coaster was running at a good speed. So that will conclude my review video of Shivering Timbers. I hope this video has convinced you that a trip to Michigan's Adventure is worth it just for Shivering Timbers alone. I know that I cannot wait to get back as I'm itching to ride Timbers some more. At some point, I plan to release my top 15 wooden roller coasters, and I'll probably redo my top 25 roller coasters at some point in the future, so definitely look out for those videos. Also, be on the lookout for the Coaster Idiots episode filmed at Michigan's Adventure. Anyway, thanks for watching and I hope you guys learned something new. If this video inspires you to go to Michigan's Adventure, feel free to tag me in your Instagram posts and I hope you have a good time. Alright, like, comment, subscribe, peace out.